Thank you, Carl. Thank you, everyone, for hanging in there post-lunch for quite a dense collection of information, and not a kind of arousing John Philip Sousa. One of the real important things is to see the nature of the ideology that we're up against. I think we may not have encountered that before listening to what David has just described. We've heard the words, we've seen the parts, we've heard the terms, the critics use them in their criticism of it, but a systematic presentation of what woke ideology and cancel culture is essentially is quite daunting or quite haunting. So I've done my best to try to put together a counter-proposal to that. I've shown that although the French rationalist Enlightenment was very sophisticated, philosophically, it had towering intellectual figures that were defining of Western civilization and culture, led to horrors. There was a path higher, stronger, and better than that. Same with Marxism. Marxism was very sophisticated philosophy and analysis of contemporary human affairs. That was beat also. So when I listen to David on this one, it's extremely unsettling because it's like having the rug pulled out from under you. When trying to say otherwise is proof of your guilt or proof of your criminality, it seems like checkmate. It feels like checkmate. And I think he does a very good job to indicate, and this is happening all around us, but we don't swim in. These aren't the circles in which we talk. But all of these progressive left thinkers and speakers and college administrators, this is their whole lives. This is their friends. These are their cocktail parties. They're not trying to think like that. The world is like that for them. And so it's kind of half the country. Admittedly, a big part of that half are sheep that are just mean well. They're not as sophisticated as what David just presented. But they are led by that, and they go to school, and they want to be the best in the class, and they want the teacher to like them, and they want their papers to be cool, and they want their fellow students to be cool. So they're doing their best to have what he just described as a worldview. And so it's very difficult. And so I want to spend my time as for the closing lecture to see if there are resources that can similarly turn back an ideology even as profoundly undoing as what David has just described. So I've entitled this presentation, The End of Woke Culture and a New American Future. Okay, woke ideology has embedded itself in every part of human life and culture. This so much resembles the long march through the institutions because it is in every institution. It's in the media. It's in the elected political life. It's in educational life. It's in K through 12, pre-K. It is everywhere, and because it matches the intention of the cultural Marxists of the Frankfurt School, people have heard of that, recognize that. They think of cultural Marxism. Everybody's heard the phrase, the long march through the institutions. And because that surrounds us everywhere, we feel like, aha, that's the Frankfurt School. Because Dutschke, this is Gramsci, but Dutschke was a German thinker that came up with that phrase, the long march through the institutions, because we see the assault embedded everywhere. The best used phrase is American Marxism or cultural Marxism or the Frankfurt School. As David pointed out, in the 90s, that died. It died. And the sophistication or the thoroughness of replacing it with a power grid out of which there is no escape, It's like Kafka. It's really, it actually makes Kafka look like William F. Buckley. It's thorough. And so, so this Long March is, people mistakenly attribute it to the Frankfurt School. It is not Marxism anymore. It's a mistake, although the woke ideology looks foolish a lot of the time. Voila. It looks foolish most of the time, but it's far more virulent and invasive than its rationalist and materialist predecessors. Insisting on calling it American Marxism is a way to lose our country fast. And I think we're convinced of that now, after having sat through what David presented. Calling cancel culture, woke ideology, DEI, ESG, SEL, calling that Marxism to me is no different than calling what an F-35 Lightning II is no different from a World War II P-51 Mustang. They're both planes, they both fly, they were both built for the same reason, but it would be a mistake to go to war without knowing the difference. And that's part of why we do what we're doing today. So far we've seen a binary, the twin rails of choice in response to excessive injustice. One rail removes God and faith, one rail renews God and faith. This is the options, revolution, reformation. You have the one that removes God and faith, you have the one that affirms God and faith. Reformation and awakening eventually blossomed into the birth of this country, into the birth of the United States of America, and into the eventual spread of freedom worldwide. Countries all over the world emulated the American democratic experiment, and that became the ideal of life in the world. This was from the simple decision of reformation over revolution. As a result, as I pointed out, the result of that decision resulted in 2 or 3 centuries of the radical increase of human equality, gender equality, racial equality. It produces the result which everybody likes to see. Faith in free societies eventually collapsed, international collapsed, both in theory and politically. The new attack from the progressive left is now more complete and more serious than earlier revolutions. What is now removed is not God, and as we've heard, but rather meaning, order, even language itself. These have been removed. David has accurately referred to it as post-atheist. Total race and gender hatred and confusion is now everywhere all the time. Meet Miss America. Here's Miss America. Born male. The progressive left is not against the rich, it is against thinking and speaking. It forbids dissent, as David indicated. It removes your right as an individual, it removes your rights, your constitutional rights, but it removes your God-given status as even being able to declare what you see with your own eyes. It removes you. The current conservative habit of, I've already mentioned that. So there's that mostly peaceful riot. The progressive left the progressive left follows a long-range, carefully crafted strategy that removes the possibility of justice or honor in this country. It offers nothing to improve human life. It is perfect only at destroying. The only thing it does is divide, deny, undo, break things, and disallow speech. That is the nature of the progressive left. As I said in my earlier lecture, pointing out its hypocrisy is a loss of time, is a waste of time. We need the same systematic pursuit strategically as the left. I don't know if we're ever going to pick up that habit. It's not something we tend to do. The purchase of the judicial system and the suffering that we're going through now by having DAs and judges all over America undo our country is the fruits of systematic and serious pursuit. Censorship. Pure wokeism began in a tiny house of mirrors created by language philosophers. It created pure relativism, no shared basis of being, no shared basis of speaking. It creates perfect isolation and alienation. That's what happens to people. Not only does it philosophically undo our capacity for identity, but by removing the ground by which any social engagement is legitimately possible, its outcome is a generation of people thoroughly isolated, thoroughly alone, unprotected. The vulnerability, like if you look at the charts, you see like up until like 1980, lesbianism in America, like 0.5%, 1%, 0.5%, 1%. And then suddenly with the woke revolution, 28%, 33%, the individual is unprotected. It is isolated. And part of the isolation is removing the ground by which even a possible common space of conversation is possible. As we heard from David, utter and thoroughgoing relativism and no origin point of identity, isolation and alienation. How did this obscure philosophy become such a menacing power? How did this small, self-absorbed little club of language philosophers survive? Just as David explained, when the Soviet Union failed, Marxist race and gender theorists, critical theory arose, and it was a match made in, the phrase is heaven, match made in hell. It was a match made in hell because the race and gender hustle is based on permanent victimhood. That needed, now what we have is racism and gender oppression everywhere all the time. Daily life in the country is haunted by this. Every person around you is an oppressor. It originated in the Foucault power grid or social determination of who and what we are. In short, postmodern critical theory rose from the grave and became the prevailing ideology of division, leading the charge to destroy America with such surgical precision that it makes Marxism look small. By bringing the war of violence and vengeance into race and gender, these new fans of critical theory were able to do what Marx could not. It's not oppression from corrupt clerics. It's not oppression from monarchs or capitalists or bourgeoisie. It's oppression from everyone, everywhere, all the time. And who decides? Again, as David points out, my feelings decide. No basis of rational explanation is needed. In fact, rational discourse itself, again from David, rational discourse itself is a form of racism. It's a form of oppression. So, where do the binary options that I've introduced as an antidote, as something that helped us out of the two prior secular systems, worked before the American Revolution succeeded where the French Revolution didn't? The American century of equality and human rights grew while Marxism killed. Where do those same options appear today in something as thorough and depressing and undoing as the radical relativism that David just described? Where does it fit in with these new and perfected forms of anti-human and anti-America agents? The first rejection of God, French Enlightenment dealt with our inner life, our faith in God, so that our religious belief. The second rejection of God happened in our physical life. French Revolution, Rationalist Revolution, Russian Revolution, Marxist materialist revolution. First was from, this is the worship of reason, first from our inner life, next from our outer life. The bitter invasion of woke ideology is attack on our whole being. That's why David concluded his comments with the focus on identity. Your identity. Do you identify with how you think, how you believe, how you understand, how you interpret the world? Do we identify with that? Is that part of who I am? It absolutely is. Do you identify with your physical body? Is that part of who you are? It absolutely is. So the woke ideology movement starts like the French Revolution just dealt with the inner life. The Marxist Revolution dealt with the physical life. The woke revolution deals with the whole of ourselves, mind and body, so that neither has a ground of origin point, a ground of anchor, a ground of system in which the world makes sense. Neither the world of belief, of thought, of rational life, of common discourse, of language makes sense, nor the belief even of my physical body, that I'm male. Even that's not available. So the attack on identity is complete in the woke revolution. That's why identity politics is the carrier of this insidious thought system. We are no longer exterminated for what we've done. We are to be exterminated for how we were born. Our identity is evil. Born male, born heterosexual. Denying your crime is proof of your guilt. The French and Russian revolutions were directed at political systems. The woke revolution focuses on the destruction of culture and human relations. Because if you remove language, if you remove meaning from language, human relations are not even possible. The woke revolution is not aimed at systems, it's aimed at you individually, you personally. It's not aimed at something you've done, that you're a greedy aristocrat or a bourgeoisie or a corrupt priest or something like that. Just your birth. The source of evil in this world is your existence, your identity, not what you've done. This is what we're facing today. And so the question is, are there any of the earlier options that I was describing available in response to something as complete and totally relativizing and totally dehumanizing and complete in its opposition to our being? Not anything we've done. Is there something available? Yes. Either there is a creator, and a God and faith, or it has to be replaced by something lesser. No. It's that simple. It's that simple. Either there is a creator, or you must develop an entire view of the world that's based on something less than that. What is the source and origin of our identity? Is our identity our color? In David's case, in Carl's case, yes. In my case, no, I'm only kidding. Is it based on your culture? Is it based on the activities of your ancestors? Is it based on your opinions, your station in life, or where you live? Is that the source of your identity? No, these are called secondary characteristics of identity. These are called secondary characteristics. The antidote is just as it's always been, and it's enshrined in our nation's founding. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Our identity, thank you. Our identity comes from the fact the simple statement that I am created. Or you want to know something else about me? I'm created equal. That you're equal to me. You're equal to me. That's something I know about myself. Unalienable. These are elements. These are my identity. I come from somewhere. I have an origin. It isn't socially constructed. So the first step in responding to the radical relativization that David depressed us with for over an hour just a second ago is that I come from somewhere. I start from somewhere. Love comes to me. The nature of why I exist is not defined by power relations. It's defined by love and origins. So at a certain, even when you have a system as thorough in assaulting the whole of you, nevertheless, the first step in the antidote is simply declaring that my identity is defined, and you don't even have to be religious. My identity is defined by the fact that I am a creature. Deny that, please. Please tell me that, well, some of these trans people, you can say they created themselves from various parts or whatever, but, But anyway, so identity starts with the declaration of the founders, and this is an important thing to adhere to with all of our heart. It's the first line of defense, because people are trying to put things on you to say who you are, and you have to be able to say that is not who I am. And they say, oh well, who are you? Well, the first thing I am is created. Everybody must agree to that, and then I'll tell you what it means to be created. Equal. That's the next thing, and so forth. Okay, so that's an important first step. Identity is given to God by each person. The primary characteristics of our identity is that we are equal, we're free, we have rights, our value is infinite, universal, and common to every person. That comes from the fact of our creation. Affirming a creator makes you a champion of equality and human rights. Period. The only way you can be a champion of equality is to find something that is common to every single human being equally. And that is what's available for that. Otherwise, you're going to have shades of gray and shades of white and shades of, not blue, but maybe somebody's making themselves blue these days. I don't know, but do you understand what I'm saying? To be a champion of equal rights and human rights requires nothing other than to affirm the simple, common, logical common sense of being created. Identity politics, on the other hand, pits every person against every other person, returning us to Hobbes's Leviathan, which he described as a war of all against all, and he described as we heard earlier today, solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. And do you know what is the solution to that? Do you know what Hobbes's solution to that was? The establishment of a central government. Sound familiar? Okay. This is why our time feels so intense and so heavy. Divisiveness is everywhere and constant, even in our preschools. We see how much worse and thorough wokeism is than earlier, simpler ideologies like Marxism. Under Marxism, the people who needed to be exterminated were the bourgeoisie and the capitalist class. A tiny number of people. That's who are the enemies of people, and they needed to be exterminated. How many, just in 70 years, they killed over 100 million people, having identified only a tiny group of people that needed to be exterminated. What is going to happen when the enemy is not a small class of people? It's everybody, everywhere, all the time, everywhere, by birth. This is the danger we're facing today. Now attacking human identity has resulted in horrifying forms of self-hatred, people carving themselves up into little inoperative pieces, trying to deny and destroy their birth identity. Identity is the problem now. As David pointed out, transsexual medical experimentation on human beings and children is the ultimate conquest of woke ideology. So what can be done? Here's what I want. Since I've said that the binary is always this, God or not God, faith or not faith, when there's a problem, do you destroy it, do you fix it? And throughout the day I've been pointing to the American roots. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and with certain unalienable rights. Is what exists in American roots sufficient to meet something as thorough and corrosive and divisive as what David described? In certain ways, yes. Created equal, endowed by our Creator. This is, as I just said in a few slides, this is the first step that all must take. All must take. And we have great champions like Carrie who spoke, and the gentleman, Dr. Dean. We have champions who are fighting wars for the sake of our good. All we want to do is give this small little part to just augment and enhance and put us on common footing so that we are all one in our first knowledge of our marching orders. Where do I come from? What's my identity? That makes me invulnerable to the onslaught of the radical relativism of the woke ideologists that David burdened us with. Okay, so this is good. It's good, but is it enough? This is what I want to look at, and this is what the young lady in the back brought up earlier in the day, and I gave that aggravating response. We'll get to that. The ideology, so is it enough? That's the question, and that's what I want to look at as we close. The ideology working against us is more pernicious and more diabolical than anything we've ever faced. I think that David made that clear, right? Didn't it feel checkmate? Didn't it feel checkmate? Okay, that's a big thing we have to face. Secondly, national sovereignty is harder to declare as a simple matter of a posture. We must, but it's in the face of global interdependence. There's a new global political reality in which we must affirm national sovereignty when it's far more difficult to do so, because global interdependence makes it very hard, very subtle, very difficult, very challenging to create those boundaries when every hiccup is an attack on the market, a supply chain, or your medicine, your arthritis medicine out of Beijing, or it's a more difficult, more complex reality we face. Privacy and personal sovereignty in the face of both state and private behemoth of total surveillance and control. Our privacy is constitutionally guaranteed. Our sovereignty, the consent of the governed, as Carrie described earlier, it's constitutionally guaranteed, but we live in an almost irreversible behemoth of state and corporate collusion into total surveillance. I don't think there's anybody in the room who does not feel surveilled. You put VPN on your phone, and okay, it'll block out like 0.01% of Google's knowing everything about, whether you scratched your ear a minute ago, but it also prevents you from calling your mom because you got your VPN. I mean, there's no way around it. And this is also a challenge to our capacity to stand for our rights as citizens. And here's the question that was raised in the back. AI, social media, transhuman medical technology is another, it's a technological, it's a material assault on our identity. Not only the philosophical assault that David described, but it's a view of being human that regards matter or technological, like implanting chips and things like that, or enhancement of intelligence and things like that. AI was raised as superior to human beings. It's not. It's not. But what part of being human do we stand in to guarantee our resistance to? It's like Marxism on steroids. It's like matter on steroids. It's this idea of science and technology answering everything rather than the virtues needed that come from the affirmation of the divine. All right. So, what is sufficient in our foundation? The affirmation that God is the source of my identity and purpose the purpose of my nation. National sovereignty, privacy, property, personal sovereignty, and our identity must stand against. Those are already in our founding documents, the work of the framers, the work of the Constitution, work of the Declaration. They're there already. That's sufficient. It's necessary. We have to ground ourselves in that. What might be insufficient in America's founding, in America's framing documents, in this affirmation? Is there anything that needs to be augmented, added, that's not sufficient yet? One of the things I want to point out is that America was able to stop the Christians from killing each other. The Christians in Europe killed each other for 30 straight years to such a degree, the 30 Years' War, that do you know why the 30 Years' War ended? The 30 Years' War was between Catholics in the South, the Southern Romance language Mediterranean Europeans, and the Protestant North. Do you know why that war finally ended? No more people to kill. No more people to kill. Catholics and Protestants. They were exhausted. They wiped out a huge percentage of the male conscriptable population. There was nothing left to war on. These were Christians. And in America, the American ideal was able to bring harmony to religious believers and create a oneness as the foundation of our country. The greatest miracle of American development was the ideal of religious liberty, the ideal of freedom of worship that stopped narrow parochial people who was willing to, religious people, believers in God, from thinking it's all right to kill somebody who believes differently. America became greater than that and harmonized what Europe could not do. That was the American Revolution. That's what brought the colonies together. That's why they originally were colonies. They were separated. They would not have been able to form our country if they hadn't overcome their separation and their differences. It was the unity of Americans across political, religious division that allowed the country to become the United States. The United States. And so this was the founding of America. But in the interim, since the wars of independence, we've had 200 or 300 years in which now it's no longer Christians coming into America. It's hundreds of years of every single religious person, every single culture, the whole world is in America right now. And what is needed now is for America to do that one more time. They did it among Christians who in Europe had killed each other to extinction, almost extinction. Now we have to recognize our allies in every faith tradition. Do African traditionalists, do they have good respect for their ancestors and their elders? Yes, African traditionalists. Some people might think that's a low form of religion. I don't care. Be as low form as you like. Do you love your mom and dad? Good enough for me right now. Good enough for me right now. Because if you love your mom and dad, you're inside of a family. And if you're inside of a family, you're not isolated and alienated. And you don't have some sick New York language held in my mouth. I did it, telling my child that they're confused and that they should see the therapist and see the counselor and take these puberty blockers. They're not isolated. They come home to their mom and dad. And so I don't care what your religion says. I don't know if you're saved and washed in the blood. For a moment, I don't care. I just want to know. Do you have faith in an Almighty of some sort or another? Does your faith tell you to be conscientious, to be hardworking, to be forgiving, to be serving, to respect your parents? If so, it's enough for me. This is what I'd like to say: a new American war of liberation. The same thing we did to found our country once. We need to do it again to found our country again. We need every ally in every tradition. And all religions have their wrong sides. George, during lunch, was talking about the jihadi. Make a distinction there. And of course, the bad parts of religions bleed out into the common believers. These are problems we have to face. But we have to, if division, if separation, if alienation is what's causing us the problem, we have to not do it, not do that. Okay, is that all right? That's all right? So what's needed, it's nothing new, it's nothing different, it's something greater, it's something broader, it's something better. It's doing it again. It's not easy, but we have no choice now. Okay. The second thing that I'd like to say is one additional more thing, is that the affirmation of human freedom that is declared by our founders and framers. All men are created equal. We have freedoms guaranteed in the Constitution. It's individual freedom. It happened in an era and a culture of religious culture, of family culture. America was able to survive with the guarantee of individual freedom during the period of time when the responsibilities which come with individual freedom were protected by family and by church. Both of those were eroded. With the scientific challenge, religion was made marginal, and the family was left exposed. Religions, in the middle of the 20th century, religions failed to protect the nuclear family. It became relativized on family and left it exposed. And by the time the woke revolution has, the family gets broken down, and now the individual is exposed. So that's how it went. And so individual freedom guaranteed by our framers and founders. Why? It says we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and our freedoms are certain inalienable rights, including the right to speech, right to assembly, right to freedom of religion, so forth. Why is it that God created human beings free?
Love.
Why?
Love.
Explain. Okay, I'll explain.
Love is freedom.
You can't love unless you're free.
Yes.
You can do lots of great things, but in order to love, you have to be able to choose not to. If you like me and you have no choice, what do I know? What do I really know? Or you're afraid of getting fired. I don't know if you love me or not. Okay, so So individual freedom is given so that human beings have the capacity to love and to feel love and to be loved. Without freedom, this is not possible. Love produces, what does love do? It ends up in families. Love ends up in families. There's some cute little girl in your math class. It ends up with a wife and kids. You know, love happens and produces families. So the individual freedom is meant to manifest constantly and consistently in each natural outcome of what it does. This is what it does. So what the founders and framers identified as freedom, as our God-given rights, what they identified was our identity and our purpose. We're trapped in that purpose. We're trapped in that purpose. We want to love. We want to feel love that will end up in a family. The fact that we exist at all, it comes from family. And so that freedom naturally produces families. It's this that should produce a country. Not individuals inventing a political system. It's what love does. Yeah. What love does produces a nation. When you get bigger, then you have to start building guidelines. You have to start building political systems. And ours is the best political system ever developed. But it isn't developed because individuals are free. It's developed because free individuals produce populations, produce societies, produce cultures. That's what happens. So when we founded America, when America was founded, radical individual freedom was protected by communities, church, families, and so that my identity had a home, had a buffer, had protection. Now that protection has been stripped away. The individual is vulnerable, is exposed, and we've seen what happens. There's no protection for individuals. So what the second thing I'd say that is needed in addition to, as part of a new American revolution, a new American founding, a second founding, is that which had provided the non-abuse of human freedom. Like when we founded America, citizens were declared free. We're free, right? We're not governed by anybody except by who we grant consent to be governed by. We're absolutely free. Why didn't they just have a sudden explosion of transgender people? Just the moment I'm free, I can do it anything I want. The phrase that every conscientious person talks about is there's no freedom without responsibility. There's no freedom. That's a fact. It's true, but it's just an utterance. It's just an aphorism or a slogan. There's no freedom without responsibility. How do we add responsibility into a society in which the individual is utterly isolated? And that religion has already been emaciated by the rise of science. Like someone said, who needs God when you got Google? You ever hear that one? I mean, it's a horrible saying. But family automatically produces, parents are completely free. If you have kids, there's responsibility there. They don't remove your freedom, but they fulfill it, they match it, they complete it. All parts of the family always add the completion of what a radically free individual is like. I'm free. I'm free. I can do anything I want. I can. I'm an American. I can do anything I want. There's my wife sitting right there, Hiroko. It's not that, it's because she's sitting right there. It doesn't mean I can't do anything I want. I still can do anything I want. I won't. I wouldn't. It's not a burden. It's not a constraint. It's what the nature of freedom is. And in the family, freedom is its true and accurate thing. And so this is the second additional Americanism that we're hoping to kind of introduce with settlement. One is we have to be able to do what we did once before. You know, like the Blues Brothers, putting the band back together. This time I'm going to even be friends not only with the Catholics, for God's sake, you know, but on top of that, with a Hindu. Imagine that. That's crazy. One more time, and better. And then the second thing is, I'm not just declaring stuck here. I'll just work it off of here. Thanks. Okay. I'm not just affirming the freedom, my God-given freedom, born free, to do whatever I want. I'm identifying why. Why? Why are you born free? I don't think anybody disagrees with that. Yeah, that's right. You're born free to love, right? You're not born free to means you can go on a cruise or something like that. You can go on a cruise even if you weren't born free, but you can't love if you're not born free. And so the second little additional thing for an America a second time, an America that beats that. And that's a tough-looking opponent right there. I mean, you're watching the videos, the tapes of their last 3 fights. You're feeling bad about getting into the ring, honestly speaking. But one more time, religious breadth, religious acceptance, non-divisiveness, and plus not only just I'm free. That's fine when you have a religious culture and a family culture. Why? Love. But that's not the punchline of this conference. The punchline of this conference is that love makes families, and families make nations. Families make nations. They just do. Thank goodness that this is what happens in families. And so the assault on the family was not particularly done by the woke people. That had already been accomplished. They arrived at a bunch of people that are unprotected by their moms and dads. Their moms and dads, these households are a mess. These households are a mess. These kids are downstairs playing video games for days on end. The parents don't even know if they're home or not home. And then they go out, then they end up shooting up schools and things like that. It's too hard to rebuild. It's too hard to rebuild religion in an age of science and technology. The faithful are the faithful. No. That comes through the family. It comes through the family. And the family already provides the safety mechanism so that individual freedom does not falsely mean free to do whatever I want. This is natural. This is automatic. It's what love does. We just have to affirm this, and then the design, then the design happens on its own. So to conclude, then, an America one more time, bigger, broader. That love which we pulled off in 1776 to get the colonies together, to get the Christians who had killed each other to death for decades on end, we did it. We made a union. We can make a greater union, And the second thing is not only my identity as free, but my purpose as free. My purpose as free. And once we know this system, then I already have the model. So there's Ben, he's like my brother, or David's like my brother, or Marx is like my brother. I know what that's like. I know what the kind of responsibility goes with having a brother. It's not a burden, it's natural life. And then the individuals are protected. It's like, how about some big elder brother, instead of like these poor moms at school boards, how about some big elder brother kind of marching into some grade school? Say, you're doing this to my little sister? Something like that, I mean, I think a re-protective cover around the individuals to protect them from their isolation and their alienation is what has to be added into the American self-description, self-identification, the patriots, the warriors, the people who are fighting the fights. If we can add these couple of little insights into what we're doing and recognize allies everywhere in the country and everywhere in the world that have these values, I think we have a chance. So that's the conclusion of my lecture in response as a counter-proposal to the World Club.
Before anything else, Aaron, can you wait 1 second so we can do a group shot, or we just want to do a quick group shot? If we, you got to go. Oh, okay.
Yeah, she's gonna go.
Okay, got it. Go for it. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Okay, we would want to do a Q&A session, but we'd also like to get a group photo together before anyone else leaves, if we can. So,
Carl, we're all in touch.
okay. Okay.
Please stay in touch. Please help this work. Tell us how we can help you. Let's build everything we can. We have no time and no chance to win this without giving our all.